What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and I would like to welcome you to the calm before the storm. The NFL Combine is officially behind us. There were some rocky waters for us Dallas Cowboys fans, what with the report from NFL Network just one day after Jerry Jones's sit down on his bus, the report that Tyron Smith is unlikely to return to the Cowboys in free agency. We did have a video on this subject available for you here on the Blog and the Boys YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, our podcast network. We are available on all major podcast platforms for the latest and greatest in terms of discussion and analysis surrounding America's team. If you like what I do, you can follow me on social media at RJ Ochoa. Like the video, tell a friend, whatever the case may be. Those things really help us out, and we appreciate those of you who have already done so. We are chasing our friends at Arrowhead Pride, SB Nation's home for Kansas City Chiefs content, to become the most subscribed to YouTube channel across all of the SB Nation universe. So once again, thanks to those of you who have been a part of our journey so far. So I mentioned the choppy waters that we had, what with the Tyron report, and Jerry spoke about his all-in comment. He walked it back. The Dak stuff just will not go away. Whether or not an extension is going to happen, this is going to be one of the longest weeks in the life of that conversation as we get closer and closer to the new league year. And that's why we're here today. In case you did not know, the new league year and free agency officially begins next Wednesday, March the 13th at 4 p.m. Eastern. Nothing can become official relative to free agents that are signing with new teams until that moment in time. It is the start of the new league year, so you'll hear those terms a lot if you're new to this sort of thing. But 2 days before that, we do get a bit of an oxymoron. The legal tampering period in the NFL begins a week from today, the day we're releasing this video, Monday, March the 11th at 12 p.m. Eastern, so a little bit more than 48 hours, obviously. What is that, 52 hours, I guess. Look at me, that sharp math. Anyway, next Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern is when the legal tampering period opens, and it is more likely than not, I should say, that we will hear the majority of big-time free agent deals announced in that window on Monday and on Tuesday. But again, they cannot become official. There are no real instances in NFL history, at least modern NFL history, of a big-time massive thing being agreed to and then somebody getting cold feet at the last moment. Those things have happened on smaller scales, but for the most part, things that happen on Monday and Tuesday, while not official, will be what is officially processed on Wednesday when the new league year begins. Why are these dates relevant to the Dallas Cowboys? Well, besides something like the Dak Prescott extension, which the Cowboys would seemingly have to have done by the beginning of all of this so they can use whatever salary cap space they would gain from an extension or a restructure with Dak, the Cowboys themselves, like every team in the NFL, have players who are set to be free agents, players who are on or were on expiring contracts with the team. So we've put together this video today to discuss every Dallas Cowboys free agent to be, as a bit of a refresher for you, obviously with a week to go before these players potentially either return to the Cowboys or find new home. So let's go ahead and take a look. These are all 16 of the Dallas Cowboys free agents, as I have an itch right there. And as you can see, they're kind of spread all over the place just from a name standpoint. Offensively, the Cowboys have Tony Pollard, who played on the franchise tag last season. Tyron Smith, we talked about him again. You can go watch that YouTube video if you want a discussion on that situation specifically. Tyler Biadasz played on the final year of his rookie contract. He was a fourth-round draft pick of the Cowboys in 2020. People forget the Cowboys actually traded up with the Philadelphia Eagles in order to draft Tyler Biadasz. Definitely a name to watch. Chuma Edoga feels like somebody who's probably going to walk in free agency in my mind. Rico Dowdle, I know that there's a lot of people who are a fan of his and want to see him return to the Cowboys in the backfield. Sean McEwen, the Cowboys obviously already have Jake Ferguson, last year's second-round draft pick, and Luke Schoonmaker. Peyton Hendershot is another option. You just reach a point where you have so many bodies at a certain position. Defensively, the Cowboys have more free agents than anything else. Stephon Gilmore is a big name. He's obviously spoken throughout the Super Bowl car wash about wanting to return to the team. Dorrance Armstrong, that deal that the Cowboys brokered a couple of years ago now looked incredible for Dallas. I was somebody who was very upset about all that. I've got the egg on my face still. Maybe the Cowboys are able to bring him back. Jonathan Hankins, somebody who the Cowboys acquired just before the trade deadline, not in 2023, but 2022. And they did bring him back last year on a one-year deal. So you wonder if there's another one in the cards. I think we'd feel much better about the situation if Mozzie Smith had played better as a rookie, but, water under the bridge, I suppose, right now. Jordan Lewis, we're going to get to these in a little bit, but, just kind of 30,000 foot perspective. If the Cowboys are able to bring Stephon Gilmore back, I do think that probably spells the end of Jordan Lewis, just because in all likelihood, your secondary features Trayvon Diggs and Stephon Gilmore on the outside and DaRon Bland playing nickel the way it was intended to be, the way it was extremely early on throughout the 2023 season. Jaron Curse, the Cowboys have offered extensions, not offered, they've negotiated and brokered extensions with both Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson. So it does kind of feel like that could be the end. Dante Fowler, Neville Gallimore, Noah Igbenogany, who the Cowboys traded Kelvin Joseph for straight up last year. Again, some of these are players who might return, but they feel unlikely to in a lot of capacities. From a specialist standpoint, does CJ Goodwin have one more go left in him? I don't know. He's obviously a valued member of the special teams unit, and Trent Sieg, the Cowboys long snapper, obviously they've just kind of been rotating players in ever since LP Ladouceur had left the team now a couple of years ago. So if you want my honest opinion here, I think the most critical of these is arguably Tyron Smith, because as I fight off a sneeze, man, we're just gonna leave that in. That's how the sausage gets made sometime around here. The most important one for me is Tyron Smith. I know that Tony Pollard obviously played on the franchise tag. Again, excuse me for the sneeze, but look, that's just the way the internet works sometimes. Tyron Smith, by far the most important, which is why news of his, unlikeliness to return to the team is so devastating, because Tyron Smith played really well for the Cowboys, and I understand the injury concerns. I have offered those concerns myself, and I don't mean to just live in the here and now, but in saying that you're going to kind of be all in 2024, and I know that people are tired of hearing of those, hearing those two specific words over and over and over again, but you can blame Jerry Jones, because he's the person who kind of not just spilled or knocked over the can of worms. He cracked open the can and just kind of laid them all out like ranch dressing on a salad. I mean, Jerry Jones wanted us to believe that they were all in, and you cannot convince me that you're all in if you don't want to bring Tyron Smith back. I think number 2 on my list in terms of most important people to bring back, I'll go to the defensive side of the ball and say Stephon Gilmore. He's a veteran on this team. He's a big brother to a lot of the younger players. He has been there. He has done that. He has seen and accomplished literally every single thing that you can in the NFL, both from an individual and a team standpoint. He has expressed an interest to return. I think he offered a great, kind of just run for the team in December. He was at such kind of a peak version of himself. And beyond all of those things, he also offers you the opportunity for DaRon Bland to stay playing in the slot, which allows you to have a really high floor at all 3 premium corner spots. Now, it's really not wise to bet on Trayvon Diggs being completely and totally himself in 2024. You do kind of have to assume that to a certain degree, and he obviously has the contract, but that's why having Stephon Gilmore in tow really, really, really helps. You need it as great players as you can have, obviously anywhere, but given that Stephon Gilmore and everything in this capacity seems to make sense, he's number 2 on my list in terms of most important people to bring back. If I go to number 3, and that's where, no disrespect to this list, because we value every player for the Dallas Cowboys, obviously. And this is, an uncomfortable part of the year where you're saying, I don't want this guy back or move on from this guy, whatever the case may be. There are not a lot of names here that I think we are going to be heartbroken about if they wind up somewhere else. Will it be a bit of a bummer to see Jonathan Hankins play somewhere else? Absolutely. Will it suck to see Jordan Lewis find a new home? Maybe. Will he follow Jim Harbaugh to the Los Angeles Chargers? I don't know, but that would be kind of cool to see. Will it be weird if Tony Pollard ultimately goes somewhere else? Yeah. Will it, these things feel like the right decision, mostly, especially if, we feel like teams overpay. But I think that there are 3 players on this list, on this screen that you are looking at, who are critical for the Cowboys to bring back. Now, granted, they have varying degrees of criticalness. Tyron Smith, we already talked about. Stephon Gilmore, we talked about. Number 3 for me is Tyler Biadasz. I know that there's a lot of Brock Hoffman love, and I don't want to slow that. If the Cowboys feel confident, they have shown more than an ability over the last few years to kind of trust their instincts relative to the offensive line, and so I will definitely defer to them. But Tyler Biadasz has kind of been an underrated player on the Cowboys, and it's really difficult to be underrated when you play for the Cowboys. But nevertheless, Tyler Biadasz, I think, has found a proper home. And when we consider the reality, when we consider the potential of Tyron Smith leaving, man, I say potential because nothing is actually official yet. I know what the report is. We obviously talked about it here on the channel, but Tyron Smith could wind up returning to the Cowboys, right? Anything is still technically possible with a week and change to go. So that being said, assuming Tyron Smith is gone, you now have a new body at left tackle. Even if it is Tyler Smith, it is somebody who was not playing the position last year. So that's one of your 5 that has a new body. If Tyler Smith is the answer, then you now have a new body at a second spot in left guard, because obviously Tyler's not playing that himself. If Tyler Biadasz is gone, now you have a third new body, obviously an entirely new person, given that Tyler Biadasz played center. It's not a Tyler Smith situation like at left tackle. Zach Martin obviously isn't going anywhere, so you've got him at right guard. The Terrence Steele stuff, we talked about this in a recent video as well. Mock drafts all over the place have the Cowboys taking a tackle, and the insinuation from top-tier NFL draft analysts like Daniel Jeremiah, like Mel Kiper, is that there could be a competition at right tackle. So what if there is a competition? What if Tyler Guyton is the starting right tackle for the Cowboys in 2024? In a vacuum, I'm really excited about that, and certainly excited about the long-term future potential of it all. But that means we have another new person, another change. You were talking about conceivably a world where 80% of your offensive line is different in week one as opposed to what it was in the wild card loss of the Green Bay Packers. And I don't think you should keep Tyler Biadasz specifically for that reason, but it's definitely a reason that you have to at least have a serious conversation about him in my mind. So the top three for me: Tyron Smith, Stephon Gilmore, Tyler Biadasz. I think an honorable mention is Dorrance Armstrong, because you need those valuable members of your pass rush platoon. Is Sam Williams ready to be that guy? Obviously, he left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth, and there was a lot of special team penalties and things like that, but he doesn't feel like a player who you can trust, who you can rely on. And you've got Dante Fowler there as well. It's also worth mentioning that as we look at the middle portion of this list: Stephon Gilmore, Dorrance Armstrong, Jonathan Hankins, Jordan Lewis, Jaron Kearse, Dante Fowler, Neville Gallimore, and Noah Igbenogany, it's worth asking the question, how many of these players, I brought up, if I could speak, the sneeze is still getting to me. I joked about Jordan Lewis following Jim Harbaugh to the Los Angeles Chargers, and obviously Jordan Lewis played for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, at the University of Michigan. So it's worth asking the question for the second time, as I've got my words in order here: how many of these players follow Dan Quinn to the Washington Commanders? Because Dan is obviously now the head coach. We've seen that before. Remember Dan Quinn's first season as the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, coming off of his time with the Atlanta Falcons. He brought in Keanu Neal. He brought in DeMonte Kazee. He obviously toyed with a lot of other options and players. Think about Dante Fowler, ultimately not a Falcons connection, but all the way back to the University of Florida is where they went back together. And so it stands to reason that of the defensive list you're looking at, maybe not even just defensive players. Obviously, Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator of this team, but maybe, Tyler Biadasz is a fan of Dan Quinn. Maybe he liked how he spoke in meetings, even though they didn't necessarily work hand in hand together. It's very, very, very possible that 2 to 3 of these players that you're looking at in general on your screen, but more specifically in that middle column, ultimately follow Dan Quinn to his new home in Washington with the Commanders, therefore meaning the Cowboys will see them twice a year. If I had to put money on this, and I'm not going to be very clear, I think the most likely player to follow Dan Quinn to the Washington Commanders is Jaron Kearse. And I think number 2 is Dante Fowler. Those are the ones that really make sense to me. If you're worried about Stephon Gilmore, while he has been an incredible player in this short time with the Cowboys, he isn't a total Dan Quinn guy in terms of Quinn's, tenure with the team. Jaron Kearse is. Dante Fowler goes way back, obviously, with him, as we talked about here. So I'm not necessarily worried about Stephon Gilmore being the one to follow Dan Quinn, but obviously we'll see. Other than those names, though, that we talked about, I mean, would I like Tony Pollard back at around $5 million per year? Absolutely. I think that that's a great bargain. I think that sometimes the running back conversation can go too far, and we can act like players aren't worth anything at all. Is Tony Pollard or Josh Jacobs or Austin Eckler or Saquon Barkley worth $10 million a year? Probably not to most NFL front offices. But if you're talking about $4, $5, even $6 million per year, I'm suddenly willing to have this conversation. All of a sudden now it depends the length of contract you're looking for. You're looking for a 2-year deal, $5 million per, $4 million per. I'm definitely willing to sleep on it and maybe potentially consider making that decision. But other than that, again, I would challenge you to find one that you would feel really up in arms about the Cowboys losing. You're not going to be upset about Chuma Edoga. I know that Rico Dowdle has his stands, but even then, you're not going to be all too mad, especially on day 2 or 3 of the draft when the Cowboys find you a new Rico Dowdle. Sean McEwen, once again, kind of just a crowded room, crowded situation there. Maybe the Cowboys do ultimately have something cooking. Remember John Stevens-Jones, there's that potential as we get closer and closer to training camp at the preseason. Other than that, I mean, the Cowboys will find a long snapper, obviously. Maybe it's Trent Sieg, and CJ Goodwin is somebody who a lot of people have kind of been, ready to say goodbye to anyway because of the roster spot that he takes up, but he is a valued member of that special teams group. And so while I'm not sitting here and throwing a lot of compliments the Cowboys' way, especially given all the storylines that have been connected to them as a result of their time at the NFL Combine, I will say something they are generally pretty good at is, if you look at this list, even if your most coveted player leaves, it is not going to dramatically hurt their operation relative to the upcoming season. They are pretty good at that. Now, that being said, they do still have to take care of extensions for players like Dak Prescott if they want to, CeeDee Lamb. There was a report from ESPN on Sunday that he could ultimately find himself in the same neighborhood as Justin Jefferson when he gets a new deal, which is kind of crazy to think about. Not crazy in that it's possible, but crazy in how much money the Cowboys are going to have to ultimately negotiate contracts worth this offseason. They have to get to work. There is a lot to be done because I didn't even mention Micah Parsons' extension. That's not as pressing because there are still grains of sand left in the hourglass with him, at least a few more relative to Dak and to CD. But there's no time for the Cowboys to sleep, no time for them to rest on their laurels, especially with all of this starting in earnest about a week from today, once again, depending on when you're watching this. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel or podcast network. This particular episode isn't available as a podcast, but we do have 2 different shows coming out every single day. And of course, when emergency situations happen, we have emergency shows there, which you can access here also. So subscribe to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, subscribe to the Blogging the Boys podcast network. Make sure to check out bloggingtheboys.com. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads, you can do so at RJ Ochoa. That is my name. You know me from all across the Blogging the Boys universe. And well, here we are, another week, and the final week, like I said, before true pandemonium potentially unfolds, not just for the Cowboys, but for the NFL at large. So enjoy the week, whatever you got going on. Enjoy the day. This isn't, of course, the last time you'll see or hear from me and us throughout the week. We've got our roundtable coming on Tuesday. We've got the NFC East mixtape coming on Wednesday. We've got a lot of other things that are cooking. And like I said, whenever something big happens, you know that we will jump on here and give you an emergency discussion and level of analysis so that you are prepared. Let's go ahead and get out of here. And yeah, like I said, I hope you have the best day ever. And I hope you eat something delicious and watch something incredible on television. And that's about it. So what else do I have to say? Bear was in here, my dog. He didn't bark the whole time, so good job, buddy. Apologies on the sneeze; it just overcame me, and the back-to-back sneeze. So appreciate your thoughts and prayers. Thanks so much for hanging out, everybody. We'll see you next time.